As the chase for the Calder Cup continues, the 2023-24 AHL season has unfortunately come to an end for the Belleville Senators as we welcome you to episode 23 of season 2 of the Belleville Sens Podcast. A historic season for the franchise, a lot of milestones that we'll discuss today and throughout the coming weeks, because even though the season is done, the Belleville Sens Podcast is not. David Foote and Brock Ormond here. This week we'll recap the year. We'll obviously go back and look at that series against the Cleveland Monsters that was extremely competitive despite Belleville not coming out on the right side of things. And we'll run our first of our series of exit interviews. We were able to catch up with just about everybody on the roster as they cleaned out their lockers and departed the friendly city for home. And this week, Dillon Heatherington will be our first guest. And then rolling forward through the summer, we'll continue to put out weekly episodes. We'll air 2 exit interviews a week so you can hear from your favorite Belleville Sens and what they thought about the season. And we'll keep you abreast of what's going on in the Calder Cup Playoffs because, even though the Senators are done, the action is not. And the divisional finals set to get underway actually tonight, which is Wednesday, May 15th, as of the recording of this show. So, again, Senators are done, but there's still a whole lot to talk about, and looking forward to bringing that to you this week and throughout the next couple of months. Again, if you haven't yet, subscribe to the show wherever it is that you get your podcast. Leave us a rating and a review. That would be outstanding, and we can continue to bring you the program through the summer and leading into the 24-25 season. Again, David Foote, Brock Ormond here, and we didn't get a show in after the start of the Cleveland series. The split of the 2 games at home, Brock, because we were on the road in Cleveland, and it was kind of a weird situation for the Sens. With the Cavaliers still in the NBA playoffs at the time, they were holding watch parties at the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. The Sens were bouncing back and forth from downtown Cleveland out to the suburbs where the Monsters practice rink is, so it was tough to get a show in. But now we've got an opportunity to recap everything, and maybe we'll start with that series against the Cleveland Monsters before we get into a more broader discussion about the season overall in segment number 2. Senators falling in 4 games in the best-of-5 series. They win the opener here at home. And I'd said on this show, I think I'd said on our Belleville Sens game day coverage for Deer Haven Farm and Garden that I didn't think that either of those teams would lose 3 games in a row. I was wrong, but the way that those games kind of shook down, the way that the series went, really, it was anybody's game on any given night, and unfortunately just didn't go Belleville's way. Yeah, it was close, and we talked about it just before going on. 5 of the 7 games were 1-goal games. The other 2, Belleville did dominate that first game in the first series against the Toronto Marlies, which was a 3-1 victory, but that game still was even hung in the balance for a bit. That last game against the Cleveland Monsters literally was decided by an empty netter with 2 seconds left. So at the end of the day, neither team looked like they were out of sorts at all. Cleveland took a couple periods to get their legs going in game 1, but the Belleville Sens really acquitted themselves well against that Cleveland team. It was the number 1 team in the division for a reason, and in fact, they outlasted the team that they tied with in points, the Rochester Americans, which is another big feather in their cap. But the Belleville Sens had a lot of great things to build off of from this year, and the playoff appearance was great too, and of course everybody will remember that Garrett Pilon overtime winner against the Toronto Marlies here at CA Arena. That was outstanding. It was the most loud and the most rocking it's been for a while, and of course that competes with that game against Laval, that last one. But the series against Cleveland was an outstanding performance from Belleville, and at the end of the day, it's tough to win when you only score 4 or 5 goals in a series, but the battle was there, and the goaltending was just phenomenal. We've talked about it every single time we're on the podcast. Is Sogard, Marilyn, and Mandalese were the big reasons why the Belleville Sens were in this position they were in. And Sogard, some would say maybe didn't have his best in that first round against Toronto, but he was a big reason why they got this far because of the play
during the season that he had. Merrilainen comes in. Last game, Cole hadn't played in a while. Hadn't played since the last game of the season, and he nearly steals them that game. So it's unbelievable stuff. Yeah. And this group certainly has a lot to be proud of, and fortunately didn't end the way they wanted it. But when you're up against 20-plus other really, really good teams that are professional teams, you're going to end up running into a roadblock, and that roadblock was the Cleveland Monsters.
Yeah, and I don't think, like we talked a lot about the difference between the cities and the buildings, Cleveland and Belleville, and the 14,000 or so fans that the Monsters were able to get into the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. And as much as you'll see some rhetoric from the Cleveland side that says those fans really made an impact, I would argue that the 14,000 in Cleveland didn't make as big of an impact for the Senators as the 4,000 here at home did. They were able to get into the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse and basically tune out that crowd, stick to their game plan, and save for a bounce here or there. It could have been a completely different series. And there were times in those last two games of the series where it was really quiet in that big, full building in Cleveland. And the fans are kind of sitting there going, holy cow, who are these guys that we're playing against? They're really giving us some trouble. And I had a handful of fans say that to me in packing up either after Game 3 or Game 4, just saying, wow, your team was really good, and we feel, frankly, a little bit lucky to have gotten by you.
Yeah, and it was a well-coached series by Dave Bell, too, and unfortunately he can't be the one scoring goals, but he did a good job of preparing the team, and he knew that, like everybody knew, that building was going to be intimidating, but like you said, David, you went in, you quieted the crowd, and you did everything right, except for win, unfortunately. And I mean, going to double overtime in Game 3 was so tough, and that's right there probably was a wake-up call for the Cleveland fans to say that, wow, this Belleville team, we only saw them twice back in December. They were a much different group then than they are now. So this team should not be taken lightly going into next year. And for sure that the Monsters, like that basically, that Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse is basically a mini NHL rink. It's not that much smaller than the Winnipeg Canada Life Center either.
It's bigger, I think. Yeah, it's basically an NHL rink, just doesn't have an NHL team in it.
Exactly.
That seats about close to 19,000. So it's pretty big, and not only the number of seats, but it's an older building, but they've renovated it a bunch of times. They've got the biggest scoreboard I've ever seen. You just mix in some of the other elements that they have, the giant scoreboard. There's video screens everywhere, all the lights, lasers, smoke, the whole bit. Think of what we deal with in Laval, and then if you can imagine, multiply that, again, probably by 10, and it does create this hostile environment that you have to deal with. And again, I don't think that was the problem for the Belleville Senators. I think this was literally just playoff hockey coming down to what playoff hockey always does, and that's usually a bounce either way. If you're already taking care of the solid play, which they were, and the work ethic, which they were, it's going to come down to maybe a bounce here or there and probably some luck. And again, in a season that the Senators didn't have a whole lot of luck, to be frank, that trend kind of continued into that series against the Cleveland Monsters.
Yeah, and the bounces are part of playoff hockey, and the Sens did get one or two against the Marlies, but the luck just ran out against Cleveland, and it was the effort certainly was there, like you said. The effort was there. They did not look out of place at all against that Cleveland team. There was only 6 points separating them from the regular season, and we said it right off the top of the series that this is not going to be an upset if Belleville beats Cleveland, or it's not going to be a wash if Cleveland knocks the Sens out. It's going to be a battle, and sure enough, it was, with 2 games going to overtime, and that really was the difference right there. The 2 overtime games, if you switch the results of both, then you get a bounce and a power play one way for Belleville, you get a bounce the other way in double overtime. Belleville could have won this series, really. Like, it was outstanding stuff, and it was great hockey, too. The Monsters, you got to give them full credit. They've got a very well-coached team as well, and one of the youngest coaches in the league, Trent Vogelhuber, was really pushing all the right buttons, especially after that first game where the Monsters looked like they were still skating in quicksand after having that 10-day layoff in the first 2 periods, but the third period really foreshadowed what was to come, I think, from Cleveland, because they started picking it up, and Matt Sogard had to really bar the door on 16 shots in the third in Game 1 to make sure that they won. So the Sens definitely acquitted themselves well, like we said, and yeah, they went into that building. They did not look at all frazzled at all by the moment, and they came in and played an exceptional series overall. It's just I wish you just could have had a little more offense to it to break through against that Monsters team. But Jet Greaves was really good as well.
Yeah, and I talked about this on the Sens Talk podcast this week as well. When I was asked about Jet Greaves, just such an incredible story. Is Jet Greaves, Cambridge native, undrafted into Major Junior, ends up playing with the Barrie Colts, putting up some good numbers. Undrafted in the NHL, gets a look from the Blue Jackets organization, plays in Kalamazoo in the coast for a little bit, and then into Cleveland and plays so well there that he earns himself a 2-year NHL deal and has made his NHL debut now and continues to just kind of build his profile and his resume, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the Western Ontario kid can do for those Monsters moving into the next round and potentially further. But you talk about the lack of offense, and this is not meant in any way to single any players out or lay any blame on anybody individually. This is a collective effort. Everybody will say that, and again, I do feel like the Belleville Senators did play well enough to win games. That said, you look up and down the list, Yuri Smakel, no points in the playoffs. Matt Highmore, a surprising no points in the playoffs. Kyle Betts was not a big scorer. He also only played in one game, so you can't really factor him in. Cole Reinhardt only had one goal. Rourke Chartier only had one goal. Angus Crookshank and Zach Ostapchuk, who were outstanding in the regular season, only had a couple of points over 6 or 7 games. So, you can kind of see where the offense tapered off. At the same time, Boku Imama did have 3 points in 7 games and a pretty big goal. Donovan Sabrango scored twice after not scoring at all in the regular season. Stephen Halliday was the arguably best player on the team, one of the best players in the league in the Calder Cup playoffs before Belleville went out. So there is a little bit of a seesaw flip as to who carries the load, but even Dave Bell will say, and as you'll probably hear from him when we play his post-game clips from Game 4 in just a minute, 2 goals is never really going to be enough to help you progress through the playoffs.
No, but it's amazing to think about that. You got a guy like Halliday that came in and he never played. He was just a college guy as of September, October, and then he comes in, gets 9 points in the playoffs, didn't score during the regular season, had 5 assists and looked really good. He looked like he was an AHL player, and it was incredible to think, but like you say, sometimes you got to have those guys step up. You got to have guys like Halliday, Josh Curry, Bongiovanni, Sabrango, and Imama all step in when you got other guys that are down, and that's exactly what they did.
So why don't we hear from head coach Dave Bell, get his thoughts on the game and the season. This was my chat with him right after the game in Cleveland on what day of the week was it now? Friday. Yeah, I'm finally starting to get my calendar in my head back together. So this was Friday after the game, and we didn't get too deep into things because, at that juncture, the season's just ended. Everybody's kind of still processing things, and you'll hear when I mention bounces, it's not really something that Coach wants to frame that way. But let's hear from Dave Bell, and then we'll dissect perhaps what the coach had to say after the Game 4 loss in Cleveland. Here with Sens head coach Dave Bell after the Game 4 defeat here in Cleveland. First of all, Coach, congratulations on an outstanding season, a historic one for this franchise. We'll get some more thoughts on the entire season moving forward, but just another game, it seemed like, where your team was throwing everything they had at the net, and a couple of bad bounces go the wrong way.
You can call them bounces, and I'm not going to go down that road. It's just too raw, and it's too big a picture, but I thought our guys played extremely well, and I got to give their team a lot of credit. They played extremely hard, extremely physical, and Jet Greaves is an unbelievable goaltender. So our guys weren't bad. He was just really, really good. We had our looks, we had our chances, and he was up to the task, and he deserves a lot of credit. But at the same time, so does their entire team. They played extremely well. Saying that, I thought our guys, I couldn't ask. I can't sit down tonight and say I wish this, I wish that. They gave it everything they had. They played their best, and it just wasn't there for us.
What can you say about this group as a whole and just how far they came over the course of 72 games plus from October to now?
They came a long way, and I said that. I think there's a lot of firsts this year, a lot of first pro games, a lot of first NHL games, a couple of first NHL goals, first playoff win, series win. So I think a lot of good things happened, a lot of growth. I truly believe we've set a new standard for the organization around the league, that we are a playoff team. That's the bottom line. It's a standard that you just make the playoffs, and then we did reach a goal of making the playoffs. We didn't reach our ultimate goal. I thought this was a group that could have went really far in the playoffs with the way Ryan and Sean built this group, but we fell short. We lost to a really good team, but we made some big strides this year.
Maybe just a thought on Levi Marilainen tonight, kind of thrust into the spotlight after not playing for 3 weeks, and really was a difference maker, I think.
Yeah, he was unbelievable. I mean, he gets a goalie interference goal and a kicked-in goal and an empty net goal. So that's not on Levy. The guy's got ice in his veins. You tell him he's playing, it doesn't faze him. He works like a pro and a dog in practice. Last guy off the ice. So it's not surprising that he has that performance, and it's really nice for the organization to see that he's going to be pushing Mads moving forward. But excellent performance by him.
And even just on my way down, I had a number of fans and others stop me and tell me how well they felt that the Senators played. And as you just kind of said, the reputation now is starting to get around about what this organization, what this team is all about. And I think that's kind of laid the groundwork for moving forward.
Absolutely, and I think the growth in the young guys, and you see, Stephen Halliday, what a story in the playoffs, coming in for 10 games at the end of the year. So, the future. Tyler Clevin had a good playoff. Ostapchuk had a good playoff. So, Mads and Levy. So, there's guys coming up that are going to push for spots next year in Ottawa, I hope. But if not, those guys will take another step next year, and they'll be that much better. And, the Tyler Bouchers and the Juventus of the world, recover from injury. I think they'll have a really good team.
It should be. Thanks again, Coach, for all the time all through the season, and congratulations on the success again of the campaign.
No, thank you, David. I know I'm a difficult one, a prickly one, I think they usually call me, but I appreciate you being a pro, and enjoy your summer and enjoy some golf.
Yeah. So there's head coach Dave Bell at the end of the season, basically an exit press conference. And we hope to hear again from Bellsy in the next few weeks, but that's what we got for now. And even in that 4 minutes, Brock, I think there's a lot there to touch on. Number one, kind of like we said going into it, nobody is going to say that bounces were the difference, and nobody's going to be disappointed with this team or the effort that they put forward throughout the course of the season. They really did battle for 72 games, almost 80 games here this season.
Yeah, they did. It was a great effort, and you could tell, you sense the pride in Coach Bell's voice, because he knew that this team was just a chip here and a bounce there from potentially winning a series and going on to the North Division Final and going up against the Syracuse Crunch, I might add.
Yeah.
That's a team that Belleville had a lot of success. Like, they had their way with Syracuse in that 23-24 season, 7 wins in 8 games. I know things are maybe a little different in the playoffs. Syracuse maybe has some time to adjust, but I have no doubt in my mind that if the Sens had won that series, they would have had a good shot against Syracuse and potentially would have faced either Hershey or Hartford in the finals. And again, there's a lot of should have, would have, could have at this point, and a lot of thinking about the what ifs. But at the end of the day, David Bell said that the offense needed to step a little bit and get some help for the goaltenders and defense, who are playing phenomenal, and unfortunately just didn't work out that way. And he, to his credit, he didn't blame the bounces. He didn't blame the refereeing. He didn't blame the loud crowd in Cleveland, or he didn't blame any dirty plays or anything. He just simply said we played hard, we had the effort. It just wasn't quite enough, and that's the makings of a professional coach, and it's why David Bell was so successful and led Belleville to overall its most successful season in franchise history. Yeah,
a few points shy of the regular season points mark in terms of what the franchise was able to accomplish, but playoff-wise, going where no Belleville Sens team has gone before, to steal the old Star Trek reference. And it really was a successful season. I know that the fans took notice. The players finally, I feel like, after 7 years, got a taste of what hockey fans in the Bay of Quinte region can bring to the game, to the arena, in terms of helping to create that atmosphere. And as we roll through these exit interviews for the next few weeks here heading into the summer, a couple of themes are gonna stick out, and we're not running them in the order that they were conducted. We're just kind of picking guys as we go. But a couple of themes will stand out, and that will be one of them. That the players, all 30 guys in that dressing room, full on took notice of this community and the fan base and how it grew and how the support got bigger and better throughout the course of the late stages of the season and the playoffs. And then the other thing that you're going to hear a lot of is how tight-knit this group was. Some guys telling us that this was the tightest group they've ever played on. Some guys said this was the most fun they've ever had playing hockey, whether that be in their youth or professionally. And a lot of that credit does go to Dave Bell and his coaching staff, and also I think to the leadership group of this team, including Captain Dillon Heatherington, who we'll hear from after the break. So those are the kind of two recurring themes you'll hear, but the big thing for me that I take away from what Coach had to say is just that the standard has now been set. We've gone from a team that in 2017-18 had no idea really what to expect in the American Hockey League. You're kind of just happy to be here and settling in. And then we've now built our way into a team that qualified for the playoffs and went out. And then we won't talk about the COVID seasons because they really don't factor into things. And now here we are. We get not only into the second round, but basically pushing the top team in the division to the brink. And as Belsy says, and I think as everybody around the organization feels, that's the standard now. It's no longer boy, I hope we play well enough to make the playoffs. It's October 1, camp opens. We're making the playoffs this year, and we're trying to win a Calder Cup.
Yeah, absolutely, and winning 40 games, or 38 in this case for Belleville, pretty much is the standard too. And there's some. I won't lie, there was some rough patches this year like that. I always remember that 8-1 loss at home against Lehigh Valley. Mm-hmm. Right there, it's almost like you could hear David Bell through the matrix that he said we're not losing at home that bad again, and his team bought into it and. Every single game they played here at home was tight and competitive for the most part. And the one thing that you can never say about this group was they left everything on the table. They left everything just out there, not putting in that extra effort. No, they put in the extra effort, and it was outstanding to watch this group really come together and mold together as a team. And like you said, it was a real team. And, the fact that the young guys were just as important and just as much of a voice on the bench and in the room as the veteran guys were says a lot, because sometimes the young guys are just there just to have a good time or to learn, just kind of soak everything in. No, these guys were, fairly vocal, and they let the play do their talking, because it was just amazing to see. And Zach Ostapchuk and Donovan Sabrango in particular, along with Angus Cruikshank, who's still a young guy, they were both all of them were outstanding, and you could tell every time that the team went on the ice that they were in sync together, which was outstanding. And
never mind the NHL milestones. We had a handful of players make their NHL debuts this year. We had a handful of players score their first NHL goals this season. But just in terms of milestones at this level, Matt Sogard won his 50th game. Jacob Larson played his 250th game. Lassie Thompson, Jameson Reese played their 200th. Garrett Pilon scored his 200th career AHL point. Wyatt Bongiovanni hit the century mark. We've talked about, what Stephen Halliday was able to do. And, this was a record-setting season for the franchise and a really big one for a lot of players. And again, nobody wants to be done in mid-May. Everybody wants to be playing hockey in June. We all know that can't be the case, and I think once guys get home, they have a chance to maybe reset a little bit. I think everyone's going to think back on this season as a success overall.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's raw. Like David Bell said, it was raw. It was tough to really fathom after a season just ends, and you got to think about all of what happened and knowing that you have nothing left. You have nothing left to play for. Your season's just done, and he'll look back at that going home and say, this was an awesome season, and the effort was so much there every single day in practice. You could see them guys out here long 20 minutes or half an hour after the practice ended. Some days you'd see guys like Oscar Pettersson and Betts and the goalies and everybody working out and trying new things and taking one-timers and stick handling and passing and testing the goaltenders, making them work for saves and that. That stems back to the hallmarks that Coach Bell put in place in his first full season behind an AHL bench as a head coach, and that is hard work, effort, and attention to detail, as well as having the passion and drive to win and to be successful and improve yourself. And that's exactly what was done this season. It was outstanding.
Got more breakdown on the 23-24 season to come. We'll also get you up to date on what's ahead in terms of the Calder Cup playoff picture. But when we come back, we will hear from Belleville Senators Captain Dillon Heatherington, who unfortunately did not get to play in the playoff run, though his leadership was still extremely prevalent around the room. So we'll hear from Heater when we come back. Before the break now, we'll leave you with our highlight of the week, the final one from this 23-24 season, Levi Meriläinen. Coming into Game 4 after not playing in about 3 weeks, he was outstanding and kept Belleville in the game, including with these couple of saves. By Jet Greaves, and the rebound fired forward, and Justin Pearson is on a breakaway. He gets denied by Levi Meriläinen. The rebound try coming, and another save by Meriläinen. This kid is unbelievable. You would never know he hasn't played in about 3 weeks.
Stay ahead of the game. Plan now for the next season of Belleville Senators hockey. 2024-25 renewals and new seat packages are on sale now. Visit BellevilleSens.com to receive information on pricing and learn about the exclusive benefits season seat members receive. Because you want to be in on all Sens hockey action. Plan to get in the game. More on season seat memberships at BellevilleSens.com. Go Sens, go!
Episode 23, Season 2 of the Belleville Sens Podcast continues with myself, David Foote, and Brock Ormond. Don't forget to subscribe to the show. We are planning on weekly episodes at least until probably July. Once we get through our exit interviews, we'll see what's going on free agency-wise at that time of the offseason, because something we haven't talked about yet is the amount of turnover that is potentially on the way for this Belleville Sens roster. And myself and Brock will discuss that again throughout the summer and a little bit today as well. We'll maybe just give you a reminder of how many players are not guaranteed contracts with the Senators for the upcoming season. We're also going to hear in this segment from Captain Dillon Heatherington, who wraps up another year here in Belleville. His second season as captain, third season here in the Friendly City. And in our final segment, we'll get you caught up on the Calder Cup playoff picture, a mini preview heading into the divisional finals, which are set to begin tonight as of the recording of this show, which is Wednesday, May the 15th. Again, David Foote, Brock Ormond here. Glad to have you with us. And we heard from Coach Dave Bell about the standard that's been set. We've talked a lot about, what could have been, what perhaps should have been in terms of how hard the Belleville Sens worked and how much they really did deserve a better fate than what they got. But now we'll start to key in on some of the players and their seasons. And for Sens captain Dillon Heatherington, hurt in the Toronto series, right? No, hurt at the
end of the season.
The end of the season,
yep.
Yeah. Didn't even play in the playoffs. Those two games, or that game we had in Toronto before the Laval series at the end of the year, Dillon Heatherington got hurt. Still played the same amount of games this year for Belleville as he did last year. He played 60, down a little bit in his point production, up in his plus-minus, which is one of those numbers you'll always look at for a defender. But all in all, I think just another steady, as it should be, captain-like season for Dillon Heatherington, leading by example both on the ice and off for this group.
Yeah, he was true captain material, that's for sure, and he had Calder Cup experience. He won one with the old Lake Erie Monsters, of course now the Cleveland Monsters, and you can darn well bet he was just chomping, itching at the bit to get going against that Monsters team. Unfortunately, he was ruled out, so it was tough for him to stomach that, and he obviously had a lot of time to think about what was going on and kind of see from a bird's eye view of what his team was doing. And I mean, knowing Dillon Heatherington and hearing him talk, and you've talked to him plenty of times over the last couple seasons, he is a true gamer and a true sportsman and captain to the furthest definition you can find, a true leader, and it had to have been eating at him that he couldn't get out there and play, and obviously he'll want to come back and make good of that and do a little better and maybe I mean, I know it's tough to battle through injuries and it's tough to avoid injuries throughout the season, but it couldn't have happened at a worse time for him to go down injured against Toronto. But he was the type of guy that, leads by example, and he's not the most talented guy. I mean, let's be fair. He's a guy that plays tough, though, in the corners, along the boards, and he moves the puck well. And that's the thing that I think Belleville was maybe one small aspect of their game that was missing. Not to say the other guys couldn't move the puck well, because they did, but having that extra body, especially as good of a leader as Dillon Heatherington was, could have really helped. Yeah, 10 points in 60 games for him and a +9 mark, so not too bad at all for the 29-year-old now and from out west, and he's going to be, I'm sure, back ready to change the ending and finish off unfinished business for 24-25.
And you mentioned the plus-minus number. In terms of his AHL career, it's the best season he's had in terms of plus-minus. The next best, he was +8 in 2018-19. So, I know you say not the most talented, but that's probably just in terms of offense, right? Like he's not a goal scorer.
Absolutely.
He is a stay-at-home defenseman. That's what he does. He protects the net. Like you said, he goes into the corners. He clears bodies out. He makes space to create breakout opportunities the other way. And it will be interesting to see if he's back next year. And maybe after we hear from Dillon, we'll talk a little bit about those roster spots that are available and the veteran problem that Belleville ran into for the first time in basically 7 seasons this year. So why don't we hear from the Calgary, Alberta native, the two-time captain of the Belleville Senators, Dillon Heatherington, on episode 23 of Season 2 of the Belleville Sens Podcast. With Captain Dillon Heatherington as we continue with these exit interviews for the 23-24 season. You unfortunately got hurt right near the end of the season, so weren't on the ice for some big moments for this franchise, but obviously around the whole time, and we'll get to that maybe in a minute. But how was the season overall for you, maybe leading up to the injury? How did you feel about things this year?
The season was awesome. I mean, coming in right from day one of training camp, the leadership group that we had on this team, the teammates, each individual guy was such a professional, and they just came each and every day to the rink. They worked hard. They wanted to make themselves better players, but more importantly, they want to make their teammates, their line mates, their D partners better players, and it was just a real enjoyable year for myself. Yeah,
it seems the theme that's kind of almost overtaken these interviews is how close this group was, how tight-knit it was, with some guys saying they've never played on a team that's been as close as this. Where does that kind of fall for you, and how much pride do you take in hearing that as the head of the leadership group, so to speak?
It's awesome. I mean, we had a lot of guys that have been around for quite a few years, and to hear that, that puts a smile on my face for sure. Knowing that, the hard work that we put into everybody and every day, that, it worked. It truly did. I mean, I look at young guys on our team, they're ready to make the next step. They're NHL players, they're NHL people. And then, you look at the older players, they did such a good job with every